Welcome to this episode of the Forgotten Fields Project. I'm Robin Reed alongside Tara Williamson, and we've got a lot to share with you this time around, so let's get started. Hi there, Tara. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Robin?
Well, okay, I think. I'm still kind of getting used to the fact that it's fall, but it feels like, I don't know, it was 80 today. So
I know. Perfect weather swings to get sick.
Quit it. Knock it off. Let us stick with one thing and keep going with it. So how's the farm? What's going on?
It's good. We actually just moved the chickens, so they've got plugged into real electricity now up by the barn, the other type of barn that we do have left now, of course.
Okay.
And so with that, because of course the daylight hours are so much shorter now, chickens normally need about 14 to 16 hours of light to produce an egg. So once we plug those babies in, they have all the additional light they need to keep on.
All right. You mentioned the changing of the time. We were, of course, on daylight saving time.
And not daylight savings time?
Well, everybody calls it that way, but you don't savings time. You save time, don't you? If you're going to do something, you're going to save time. You're going to save money. You're not going to savings money, so you're going to save time. Daylight saving time.
I think this is a battle I'm not going to try to fight with you right here, but okay. Right.
No, that's me. Hey, but the thing was, we're now on Eastern Standard Time. We're now back to where we should be. And the really weird thing about that, I just looked it up because I thought my memory said that the reason that we did these time shifts during the summer was to give the farmers more time to do certain things. But, if you do a quick dive into the old internet, you find out that actually it dates all the way back to Benjamin Franklin musing about things. And then, in practicality, it started with the first two world wars.
Really?
They needed the soldiers to have more daylight hours at certain times in order to be effective in what they were doing. So after World War I and World War II, they shifted the time, the calendar, the clock around just a little bit in order to help out the thing. And I didn't think that was what it was. I thought it was farmers. Mm-hmm. Turns out that farmers, at least initially, and I don't know what it's like today. We should ask a few as we go through these podcasts. What do you think about it? Because according to the research, they hate it. If you're a dairy farmer and you start fooling around what time it is in the day and whether it's light or dark, and you're going to be milking your cows, you really kind of need to be in the natural flow of things. Mm-hmm. And I think this causes a problem. And I just picked dairy because we know a little bit about dairy because in a previous podcast we talked about dairy. So
yeah, you see how regimented we are as humans, and it screws us up completely. Imagine being on that schedule.
I'm completely baffled. I don't know when to eat, don't know when to sleep, don't know why I'm here. It's all because of 1 hour. But anyway, so the daylight change is underway. And then we've had this really weird thing. So, we talk a little bit weather when we get started just to get our bearings. Let me ask you this. Do you think that it has been abnormally dry?
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's because you live on a farm and you're paying very close attention.
Mm-hmm. I've seen the effects. Yes. Okay.
And the effects are real. There's no doubt about it. But I went back and looked at the last 4 months just to see what I could see. And one of the odd things about weather data is if you average them out, it amazingly works. But that doesn't mean that's the way it's sequenced. So let's go back to August, shall we?
Okay.
In August, we had 23 out of 31 days in that month with no rain. They were dry, 23 out of 31. And yet we had 6 inches of rain because it happened in one storm or over 2 days. But the rest of the time it was completely dry. So on your farm, I imagine things dry out after a few days, a little wind, a little sun, and then there's no rain for 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Right.
It has an impact on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then in September, oh my goodness, we were dry only half the month. And that was when 2 hurricanes passed by. And we ended up, at least on our farm here, with 10 inches of rain. It's a lot of rain. Mm-hmm. Okay. The next month, October, we were dry 25 out of 31 days. It only rained, and even then, it was just a trace of rain. It was a sprinkle. It was a spit. Nature spitting at us just a little bit, but not really raining on us, but it counts as precipitation. It ended up being 1/4 of an inch of rain for the entire month of October. Then we started off November, 4 out of 5 days were dry, and then we've had a little bit of rain. When you average all that out, it really isn't all that droughty because it looks like we got the rain when we needed it, but that's not true.
When you average it out.
Yeah, that's right.
But for us, it's depending on when it comes, though. That's the critical little time frame.
Exactly. So one of the things that I like to do, and you and I've talked about this before, but I'm a rain gauge kind of guy. When I go to the hardware store, you go back to that thing over there and they get the little plastic tubes. And I've got to have one of those.
Oh, yeah. I look at every morning with coffee, peek out there and see. I'm blind, though, so I just guess.
You guess, yeah. Well, that one's blue. I think I'll buy that one because I have a red one at home, but I want to get a blue one.
I can look up and just assume it's empty recently, so it's great.
That's right. I just have spiders in mine. But anyway, for about the last 25 years, dating back to my time in television weather, I joined a group of people around the country that take observations every morning at 7 o'clock, wherever they are in the country. And they don't just measure rain, they measure hail. And being the science nerd you are, you'd love this cool device. It's a piece of styrofoam wrapped up in tinfoil. And you set it out there. When the hail lands on that little pad, it makes a mark. So if there's a hailstorm, you can count the number of hail stones that hit the pad by all the little dents in the tinfoil. How's that for high tech?
It's brilliant.
It's high tech. It's great. I think I'll get you one for Christmas. Oh. The snow network is also part of this. So you learn how to measure snow, which most people don't know how to do. They just go stick the yardstick out there at the deepest thing they can find, the deepest drift, and go, wow, 3 feet.
Yes, and then brag about it online.
Yeah, no, it's more like 15 inches. But anyway, so this organization out of Colorado has the unique name CocoRoss.
That's where the Beach Boys promised to take us, right?
When it was introduced to a group of meteorologists, we looked at the guy and said, really? CocoRoss? Like, how do you expect us to remember that? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, we're cuckoo for CocoRoss around here. Now, keep in mind, this is 25 years ago, so breakfast cereal.
Oh, so no Cocoa Puff infringement here?
No, because it wasn't Cocoa Pops. It was CocoRoss. So that's how we remembered to do it. But the reason we're telling you this story is because I know a lot of farmers, they love their meteorology. They love their weather. They do take measurements, but they don't share them. So my thought was, with the CocoRoss network, you simply get a little rain gauge. They're not expensive. You take your measurements each day or whenever you can, and then you just post it on a little web app that they give you so that it goes all over the country. So here in Virginia, if you were on the CocoRoss network, you could see what happened in West Virginia last night. You could see right down to the farms what was happening. You could see what happened in North Carolina. If tomorrow's rain's coming from North Carolina, you could see how much rain they got. And we do this in Virginia, and I happen to have the one in Fincastle, and there are a couple in Fincastle. So I thought, if it was okay with you, since you're the master of all things internet, what if we posted the link there of how you can join this network? It's absolutely free. Mm-hmm. And see if we couldn't get a couple of our listeners to maybe join the network and share their data.
Absolutely, because this data will be used to better improve the local forecasting as well.
They look at what we send out. Like, for example, after the tropical systems, they use it for what's called verification.
Okay.
The forecast said it would rain 6 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Here come the readings, and maybe it was 4 inches, and they say, okay, we shot a little too high there, or in most cases, it's a little too low when it comes to tropical rain. So maybe if we could get a couple people, in fact, I think that's actually going to be a Christmas present this year. I'm going to get you a rain gauge for CocoRoss.
Okay.
How would that
be?
The
gift of doing
because I've seen your rain gauge, and I think you can do better.
Hey, that was swag. That was
nice conference you went to.
Oh, gosh. But this would also help anybody who's complaining about weather calls too. If we all banded together and actually got very good data, then we could have some of the best weather forecasting in our region. Is that correct?
Well, that'd be fine, but everybody complains about everything regardless. So
okay, well,
even good data isn't going to take that.
That is true.
Okay, so there's that.
Now, then one more question about that then. Okay. Is there like a check and balance system then? If anybody can do it, how do I know that the data they're actually providing is accurate?
It's quality checked by the National Weather Service.
Okay.
So our National Weather Service office for us is located in Blacksburg on the campus of Virginia Tech. It's right next to the airport there, and there is a meteorologist that's in charge of watching that data each day.
Oh.
And Anita Silverman is her name, and we've known each other for a long time. She looks at the data, and if there's a half an inch, a half an inch, a half of an inch, 12 inches, that might be worth a phone call.
Okay, so any outliers will be flagged. Okay.
They pull them out to start, and then they contact them and say, did this really happen? And then if it can be verified, well, isn't that interesting? That's micrometeorology there. That's really down to the nitty-gritty farm. Well, if that were true, what if that was your farm?
Well, we are. We live in an anomaly. We're in the twilight zone over there.
Exactly.
Yes.
Everybody's in their own little world, right? So it would be good to have local, super, hyper-local data. So I thought that might be something our listeners could maybe participate in if they felt like they wanted to.
Fantastic.
Okay, so we're going to go in that general direction. We can do that. We got some things going on in our weather here locally. That is for sure. We've got another tropical system that's headed our way, Rafael. It's coming out of the Gulf of Mexico in a couple of days. Don't know what it's going to do, but I think it's going to break our pattern a little bit. I think we're going to get rain more often than we have been. And I think it might still be welcome. It's late though, right? It's November. What does rain do now to your farm?
Now it's just kind of not as beneficial as it would have been a little bit ago. So that kind of crucial little time period has escaped us now. But I would definitely welcome it at this point, though.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Well, we'll order that up for you, and they'll ignore us, but that's okay. So I looked over at you just a second ago while I was telling you all about my fantastic rain story, and I saw a twinkle in your eye, and that always scares me because I think I was going to tell you that we're going to pivot now into maybe fall and winter weather and how you can tell what's going to happen down the road. And, there's ways you can do it, and there's ways you don't want to do it. But what did you want to talk about?
So there's something that I grew up with, and I'm sure a lot of you listening probably, hopefully, came to the same conclusions I did growing up, is that we always use these little caterpillars called woolly worms to predict the future winter weather.
Okay.
And if they're brown, black, brown, then it kind of mean you would have a mild, harsh, mild kind of winter. And we kind of use them just as a predictive type measurement. But then I'm kind of hearing that this possibly isn't true. Which, coming from a science perspective, of course, makes so much sense, but it just kills me because I come from such a superstitious family.
But see, look, in the spring, we let a groundhog tell us something. In the fall, we might as well let some fuzzy thing that crawls on the ground tell us something, right?
I mean, I listen to people every day that I know nothing coming out of their mouth, and I still have to listen, yeah.
All right, so here's the thing. First of all, did you know that in most of the country, they're actually called woolly bears?
No, were we just a little
I don't
down here in the holler?
I don't know, but we always called them woolly worms. But if you go to Montana, I think they call them woolly bears. But anyway, so do you remember exactly what the sequencing was and how this works and why people think it's valid?
So this is what I was kind of thinking. And normally when I see them, and of course I take a picture of every single one, and if anybody has any pictures, we would love you to share them because I just love seeing what people are seeing. But normally it's kind of a brown, black, brown, typically when I see them. So I get so excited because for me that's mild, harsh, mild. So I think I can finally go sledding somewhere maybe around January, early February for once.
Okay.
But I'm starting to learn that possibly they're evidence of what the last winter was like. They're kind of recording what the last winter was like?
Well, their colors come from their past experiences, so there's some idea to that. But in actuality, it really goes back to folklore, which is a different sort of thing altogether. That's neither science. It's anecdotal evidence of your life looking outside at things that crawl by you, right? So the woolly worm has been around for a long time. The woolly bear caterpillars, as they were originally called, were thought to predict winter weather. It is, however, a myth, a word that we'll be using a lot in the coming podcasts, and we'll get back to that. But anyway, some doctor, some entomologist, and you like those kinds of people, I know, Dr. Howard Curran back in 1948 said, it ain't real. And that's kind of heartbreaking in a way.
It is quite shattering.
But do you think it mattered to anybody?
No, I'm sure we we just spelled it because it didn't fit our little narrative and moved on, right?
And not only that, we sort of color-coded it and we categorized it. So, for example, the colors matter. You said black, brown, black. The rings on the caterpillar, right? Okay. Well, the theory is the myth is the whole idea is that the more black the woolly bear is, the harsher the winter will be. So if you see like a brown one walking around, because they do they move a lot. starting pretty soon. So you look at them, oh, that's black. Oh, harsh winter. And then 10 minutes later, the next one walks by is as brown as can be, right? So rats. Okay. But milder winter is brown in the middle. Okay. Here's where it gets kind of weird. If the woolly bear is traveling south, it's trying to escape the cold. And the winter will be mild if it's traveling north.
What I'm hearing is that we're willing to make up any story just to justify our nice little fantasies and keep that type of childhood mythology superstition alive.
If the coat on the woolly bear is thick, it means a cold winter. If the bands are black near the head, harsh to start, but then milder later. It goes on and on. But anyway, here's the one that's kind of goofy. The number of segments. The 13 segments of a woolly bear's body correlate to the 13 weeks of winter. Sure, they do. However, scientists have found no correlation between the woolly bear bands and the winter weather.
I'm hearing that these poor little caterpillars have been absolutely violated by us having to turn them over, stare, count hairs. Poor things.
Put them in jars, explain to people.
Bless their heart.
Take them to your science field trip. Yeah, all that. So, yeah, woolly bears are great. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with folklore. There's nothing wrong with folklore.
No.
It's a good thing.
It does.
I like it a lot.
And it's the intent that matters, though, because clearly we care so much about, and we kind of anticipate winter coming. There's a magicalness about it. So I think this is why this myth kind of persists, too.
My observation of people is that you can walk up to a total stranger, have nothing in common with them, and yet, in a short order, you can be talking about something if you begin with weather. Hey, it's a hot day out there, isn't it? The world is wide open.
Yeah. Yes.
For a meaningful conversation.
It is the fundamental common denominator of all of our lives.
Which can then digress into woolly bear, caterpillar colors.
Yes. Yes.
And you might agree, or you might disagree. It's wonderful. I like folklore a lot. Just saying. All right. So we did want to talk about that. What else do we want to talk about? We're going to hear from Tom a little later on. We'll keep that myth thing going. But what else do we need to chit-chat about?
Well, there's something else we just learned about a couple of days ago that I thought was fascinating I wanted to bring up with you.
Okay.
And I already know what you're going to say about it, but I want to hear you say it to my face.
Okay.
So we learned about talking about myths and weather and farming and how it impacts and whether they might just be legends or if there's something more to it.
Okay.
Out west more, and to the orchards too, very, very west, they use these things called hail cannons.
Hail cannons.
Hail cannons, yeah. So they're kind of cylindrical objects and they shoot out a sonic boom.
Okay.
Into the sky if they think a storm's coming that's going to bring hail, it's going to damage their very high dollar crops. And we were talking about orchards, so we got apples, all very, very high stuff out there.
Okay.
So they shoot these out, and I think it's like every 6 to 10 seconds, the sonic boom goes out. It's very, very loud. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that those actual airways will disrupt the ice from forming and crystallizing.
Okay.
And I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that, because people use them. There are companies that sell them.
And we're fighting a hailstorm right now. Every 10 seconds, we're fighting the hail wars.
Yeah. You ever seen those products that you then buy in the department store at the corner a year later that says, as seen on television? Those kind of products? They're great products. They're wonderful. I'm not making fun of those. But somebody will sell you anything, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about this in the sense of science, myth, folklore. If you're a farmer and you're growing grapes, if you're a farmer and you're growing apples, if you're a farmer and you're growing tomatoes, there's a certain time of the year when your crop is really vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And it generally coincides with when thunderstorms might be happening, right? Mm-hmm. So now you're searching, aren't you? You're searching for some solution or some theory that can help you out. You can't cover the whole farm with a tarp, right? Mm-hmm. So why not?
Well, they do have the hail nets.
Well, that's true, but if you got enough acreage there, you probably are not going to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So, and you know that there's all kinds of ways to guard against things like frost. If you're going to have frost and you're a big enough place that can afford it, you put windmills on your farm, and that mixes the air, and the mixing of the air evens everything out and, in fact, warms it or keeps it from getting too cold. So your thing with the boom booms could possibly have an idea in it, except the science doesn't back it up. Now, before we go too deep into that, if you're the guy or the gal or the farm or the cooperative that just spent X number of dollars for a thing that goes boom and makes a sonic boom, and you don't get hail on your farm for a couple of years, I think you would say it worked.
Then I'm going to have probably a confirmation bias now and tell all my friends. Yes.
At least. Those that are still talking to you, because this is 140, whatever they measure sound with. It's a big number, popping at you about every 4 seconds or 10 seconds. You can set the timing of what you think the hail is doing up there.
Yeah,
So,
you have a timer on the left that says good neighbor, on the right it says
Bad
bad neighbor. Yeah.
so boom, boom, boom. This thing is going off. We have enough trouble with dogs that bark all night, but can you imagine this thing going off at 2 a.m. in a thunderstorm? So here's the theory. Yes, there is disruptive forces in the air. But the makers of hail, the clouds that make hail, are way powerful. They're lifting balls of ice miles into the sky until it gets too heavy and they start to fall. And then it lifts them back up in the sky again. And it keeps doing it over and over. Each time it gets wet for a few seconds and it freezes. And that makes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger hailstones. I'm not sure this boom boom on the ground is really going to make that much of a difference. But that's just what the science says. You and I know that people believe a lot of different things, and I'm loath to say I wouldn't try it.
Right, especially if your crop's on the line.
Right.
Yeah.
That's your moneymaker right there. So for a few more dollars, you might try it, right? Same thing when we were talking about like the little the windmills to keep the air mixed together. In some farms, they put these little pots on the ground, and it's like having a little charcoal fire down, on the ground, and that warms the air down low, and it keeps the crops from freezing and stuff like that. If the wind's blowing too hard, I don't think it's all that effective. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a 50-50 pass on your boom boom machine, okay?
I think the boom boom machine
Yes.
could be very good at potentially devaluing the value of the property.
Yeah.
And so potentially if anybody wanted to move in, you don't like your neighbors, if somebody's trying to come and develop, boom, boom,
Boom.
they're gone.
What are you doing? I'm melting hail over here. Thank you very much. Good
Yes.
Good that you came.
Yep.
See you next time. I'm glad you brought that up. But that is one of the more extravagant ones that you've shown me before. So, but the science doesn't seem to back it up. And boy, if anybody wants to push back on that, we'll let them do it for us. Don't you think?
It is the thought that counts,
It
I think
is.
is the more
It is.
of that.
Well, speaking of thoughts, you talked to a certain guy that you like real well. He's the guy on the farm, Mr. Tom. What kind of things were you trying to myth break?
Ooh, well, today it's going to go straight in. Should we let him kind of take the spiel?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. All right. Tom's myth of the day that he's going to make or break for myth busting is, do farmers get along with the weathermen?
Great.
Great question. Usually, a weatherman and a farmer don't see eye to eye very often. When there's an issue, it's the easiest person to blame, even though the weather is more created by God. It's not the weatherman, but it's an easy target. So, generally speaking, I would say we're more of an arch nemesis, but we can learn to get along. So, when we're talking about the weather on the farm, there's a few different things and different theories that farmers might have on this. You can kind of tell if it's going to be a warmer spring or a cooler spring, especially if you can look at like a 10-day forecast when you're in April or so. You can tell if the weather's trending up or down for maybe the next couple weeks. It could give you a good idea when the last or first frosts are going to come, which are pretty big and important for the growing seasons. Then you've got some farmers who will traditionally go by like a farmer's almanac or something a little more traditional. I've heard of some people that will go out and you look for the ant hills, and if the ant hills are mounded up, it means the humidity and the pressure are changing, and perhaps that there's going to be a rain soon. never quite tested that out myself, but I'm sure there's a shred of truth to it.
Thanks, Tom, for that one. Hopefully we can kind of rekindle that relationship with you all later. And then we look forward to some more myths next week from you.
Coming up next time, a deep dive into some subjects that only John Alderson can talk about. Tara had a lovely conversation with him. He took some time out of his busy schedule. Tara, what sort of things did you guys talk about?
So John and his family have been here since the 1700s. Absolutely amazing. Long, long lineage on the same piece of property, too. And so he has just the most fantastic history going all the way back to Botetourt roots and who we are, where we've came from, and how those memories have carried with us and made us who we are still today and the next step forward.
Well, that's outstanding. And I know you talked to him for a fair amount of time, so we might have quite a few conversations that we can share in the coming podcast. So we look forward to that. The executive producer of Forgotten Fields Project is Teresa Reed. Interview segments are conducted by Tara Williamson. Our resident myth buster, the very dry Tom Williamson. I'm Robin Reed, resident meteorologist and broadcast engineer, and we hope that you will join us next time.